20.
Recording in progress.
I call to order the June 28th meeting of the Nuremberg Infrastructure Committee. It is 1 p.m. All right. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the May meeting.
I move that we approve the minutes from the May meeting.
You know, am I allowed to say? I can't say. What do we do when we only have two
No,
people?
you can.
I really.
Yeah, it's considered bad practice for the chair to make or second a motion, but if you're the only one here,
Thank you for
then
clarifying that. I second.
I'm in favor.
All in favor, aye. Okay, the minutes have been
And
approved.
I did read them.
Thank you. And I did, as did I, since I typed them. All right. So our first order of business is bridge construction inspector selection process. I'm glad you're here, Eric.
Yeah.
I have read through these to a degree, and not every. It's quite a copious amount of material to absorb. I don't know what the right process is for choosing this. I appreciate you putting together this sort of cheat sheet.
oh, that was actually PennDOT. who did
All right, I
that.
appreciate whoever provided this to us in the packet. That was you. Thank you. To give us at least some sense of what we are going to need to put forward as like the basis for our decision. That said, there's a lot of technical jargon. I don't exactly know what a TCDI 1 versus 2 is. And
You want the three.
you want okay, you want the 3 in every case. So
No, we'll have them. Yeah.
you know, and I think that, you know, my own sense is I looked at, there were 5 firms, I believe, correct?
Mhm.
We have CDR McGuire with Prudent Engineering, McTish Kunkel with Prudent Engineering, Navarro and Wright with McCormick Taylor, I guess that's the engineering firm. And then we have TPD with SP Engineering, and Remington and Vernick also partnered with SP Engineering. Is that accurate, first of all?
Yes.
Because there's a lot of pages.
Yep.
So we have those 5 firms. I feel like you know, one thing that we might sort of figure out how we're gonna sort of take a look at these qualifications. And, you know, maybe one of the most important things is to look at, have firms had significant experience with managing a bridge over a railroad, right, over a train line, particularly dealing with agencies like SEPTA, Amtrak, and sort of managing all those complexities. So
That takes you down to 2 firms.
yeah, it seems like it basically does. Not completely, but there are 2 firms that seem to have more extensive experience.
I mean, and the nice part about those 2 firms is that they have different TCI 3s.
Okay.
Because, you know, the same TCI 3 was assigned to multiple jobs, so.
That's true.
Like, so we could kind of rule out the other person that used that first firm because the second one's better, and the same thing here. Like, in other words, there's, the same firm used the TCI 3, right? But in each case, one of the firms was better than the other based on this railroad experience. So that kind of narrows it down to McTish and
TPD.
Yeah,
TPD.
traffic planning and design, yeah.
yeah, and the other one, I wasn't like a big fan of that third proposal. So to me, the issue is like how you pick between these 2 firms.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, but in my experience, what you'd want to do is either know the firm or check references on the firm when you're faced with a situation like that, because I've seen it go bad. Sometimes these people look good on paper, but
Sure.
in reality, they're not good.
If I may, you know, I have relatively limited experience with all this, but I have actually worked with TPD before on a PennDOT funded project. It wasn't a bridge; it was a bike trail that was federally funded and run through PennDOT. And the lead person on this one, Anthony Doherty, was actually the person I dealt directly with as the inspector on that project. And he did a great job. I mean, not only could he, you know, do the actual inspection work, but he felt, you know, they seemed very comfortable in dealing with, for lack of a better word, even though we're government as well, the red tape that, you know, comes with doing a federally funded, you know, PennDOT overseeing project.
Mm-hmm.
I found it kind of interesting that the 2 TCI 3s both received their training out and spent a lot of time working outside of this country. Maybe there's a lot more bridge projects outside outside the United States.
That says something about the US.
One of them was from Egypt and one of them was from,
Yeah, he had
from Liberia.
Got decades of experience.
Right.
That covers
I mean,
like,
Look, I think they could probably, either of them could do the job, but if we know something positive about one of them, then like I have no problem with, and quite frankly, probably all five could do it, but, like we have to pick, so.
yeah, I mean, I think one thing, TPD does seem to have more projects in Montgomery County than any of the other firms, appeared to me, at least at a cursory glance, and they've done, including, SEPTA projects, in near us, like in Upper Merion, and so that seems like another factor in their favor, that they probably have a fair good bit of knowledge about sort of local, what it's going to be like to do this project here versus, any number of, all of these firms have done scads of bridges all over the place, but, this is challenging in some ways because of like how compact the area is, how busy the rail line is, all the wires.
True, yeah.
I don't know if every bridge project requires maintenance of like pedestrian access throughout the project in a way that a bridge like this does.
It does not.
Yeah,
So,
it's just
yeah.
a vehicle bridge, that's not another complication. So, I felt like either of those two firms would be good as well.
I said I'll just put my cards on the table. I would, just because I've worked with TPD before, I would feel best about them. Eric, I guess not to put you, I'll put you on the spot here for a second. Given that Pannoni is going to be, the engineer on the project, have you all worked with TPD before and had positive interactions with them?
So I work with TPD quite a bit in the area. Not so much on their inspections end, but on their other traffic engineering and the service they offer. They're a very prevalent firm in the greater Philadelphia region.
So if the group were so inclined to select them, you wouldn't like throw tomatoes at me or anything like that?
No, I work with them on a regular basis. And collectively, many people at Pannoni work with TPD on a regular basis.
So I guess the only other question I would ask is sometimes it comes to this, not always, but like to what extent are the principals of the firm aware of this project? And like if we run into an issue, it would be someone like we could say, hey, like Joe, like, what's going on here?
So TPD is their prevalent company in the area, but they're not that large of a company. So you actually get a hold of their higher ups pretty easily.
Yeah, 'cause that's like at the end of the day, like it's all great when it's going well, but like how does the company perform when it's not going well?
Right. Yeah, I don't know the exact size, but they're more in like the 50-person company, not this large.
So we're likely to have access. Okay.
Right.
Good.
Yeah, and that was one of the things that I really enjoyed about the trail project. Like I said, the principal was the guy actually out there inspecting it every day, and so.
Well, yeah, and I'm not as concerned about that. That can be good and bad. Sometimes there's a lot of practice, but
He was very responsive.
But being able to like have someone I can say like, okay, man, like what's going on here? Your people aren't showing up,
Right.
or what? That's to me. That's like the difference between working with a good company and a bad company is like their commitment to making sure that it's good. But
True, and that was my experience with Tony at TPD.
like I don't think we have to belabor this.
No, I don't think so either. I mean, but somebody's going to have to be able to
Yeah, I can work with PennDOT
craft
on that.
those.
If
Okay.
you're all fine with selecting
Okay.
TPD, I can work with PennDOT on, based on the discussion we've had here, complete the required submission.
I started like putting numbers to it, and I'm not going to share it with you, but I'm just saying like I definitely like had higher numbers, for those two
Those two,
firms
yeah.
because of their specific knowledge.
I think so. Okay. Okay, I forgot I was supposed to be taking notes at the same time. We're talking. That was fairly straightforward. Thank you, Iris, so much for spending a lot of time looking at it to help sort of clarify there's a lot of information to take in.
Well, yeah, they have to, I mean, at least they all like took the criteria and responded to each point.
True.
Although I suppose
Yeah.
those are the normal criteria, so they like, that they're used to it, so.
Yeah.
We find when we make up our own, they don't always like answer those questions.
Yeah, this is all pretty, this is all
Yeah.
pretty standard.
Yeah.
All right, so next up, information items for discussion. I mean, if everybody's finished, I think we've reached conclusion on that. Great, thank you.
Do we have to
Information
vote or we're
items.
good?
You probably should officially vote to select TPD just to be extra on the safe side.
Okay,
I
that's
move that we appoint TPD for the
Bridge
award to
construction
TPD
inspector.
for the bridge and construction inspector.
a second.
Favor.
Great. Thank you.
Does that have to go to council or not really?
No, because council actually, as part of the process,
Delegated.
appointed this body to make the decision.
Great, because at the end of the day, that's the last thing I want to do is hold this up.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I mean, this is just not
Keep
to,
it moving.
I know we have other things, so just real quick, just to, so people watching at home someday understand the importance of this. This is a major step forward for the bridge, and having a construction inspector inevitably leads to actual construction. So
yes,
we're getting there.
yeah, bit by bit,
Yes.
marching forward.
Yeah.
Okay, on to agenda item C, information items for discussion. First up, the county transportation grant stormwater bump outs design update. We have some plans in here from Pinoni and Eric
You do.
Johnson is
So,
present to discuss them.
yeah, so I guess kind of give a little overview. This was last year, we had successfully gotten the grant money from the county to install these stormwater pump outs. So since then, we've been developing the plans, developed the survey, and where we are now is, so yeah, it still has to be fine-tuned a little bit. We're still messing with some utilities and figuring it out. But this is actually on paper, where you can see physically what these pump outs will look like on the street. I think basically it's the 4 different locations. It's just off of Windsor at Conway, North Essex, Hampton, and Forest. They're essentially the same dimension as a parking space. So they're located a little bit off the intersection, so we're not, we still allow vehicles the opportunity to turn, to be moving in and around the intersection just as they would.
Sorry to interrupt you, but just for everyone's benefit, just, I do have it shared on the screen as well.
Oh, thanks. It's easier to see.
Yeah, page 63 if you care.
So, at the basic design of it is essentially you're taking a section of the curb, bumping it out about 7 feet, and then you're filling that area in with essentially landscaping. And it's going to be able to, it takes water just currently running down the curb, heading towards Windsor, intercepts that water, and the intention is to filter out sediment as it's passing through. And then also provides the opportunity for some infiltration. So instead of water shooting right to the inlets on Windsor, we're getting some into the ground quicker. So it adds landscaping, and then also it's going to help towards your MS4 pollution reduction plan credit reduction. As I said, one of my field engineers actually out there today trying to work out some of the final details. You guys have a lot of utilities in the ground that we're currently working around and just make sure we have that all straightened out. And we're not impacting the utilities and everything's thought through. But yeah, if you have, so I guess where we are, we're finishing the final design before we go ahead and we'll be putting together the packages to bid this. We did find the county, I guess the funding for this project is coming from PennDOT, I guess the vehicle registration fee. So we did discover we have to get this project approved, and the county didn't quite comprehend the full scope of the process when they put up these grants. They now adapted that. We have to get liquid fuels approval, just like we do when we do road paving. It's just another administrative step we have to go through,
Because you're using asphalt or something?
well, it's because Pennsylvania a couple of years ago allowed counties to implement like a $5 fee when you renew your vehicle, and that goes in the pool for various uses. This county grant program is using some of that funding. So PennDOT is requiring you to get PennDOT approval for the project. So it's just another step. So
Well,
we'll work through that.
And I guess not that it's a problem, but I guess we're losing a parking space or so.
So you will, each one of these, and that's kind of like, so I know it's all theoretical, now here it is on paper, like this is the layout, it's a 4 bump outs is about 4 parking spaces that would be lost. And it would be in the area that is currently on-street parking, so there will be 4 spots lost.
Right, like, so it's like I'm the guy whose house is in Vermont, that's the only.
That's what I was saying.
I'm not me,
Correct, right.
saying that's the person that's gonna.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it is the reality.
It's all good.
You know, so we'll have to, I'm sure we'll have to work through that at some point as we go forward.
And you show work at the corners also, is that also?
So that's just kind of how that was showing up. Those are actually just the ramps, the corner ramps that are showing up.
That are already there.
They're already there. No, we're not proposing to do anything in the intersection itself. This would all be, and when we were going through the grant, I remember we having a conversation about, well, could we put them at the intersection, then you make it shorter distance for pedestrians? The end result is no, because we don't want to impede vehicles turning around the corner.
Yeah.
The reason you have your parking where it
Yeah.
ends now is so that a vehicle can pull into that road and see, oh, there's oncoming traffic, stay to the side, then move over.
And so what does it look like? Is it grass or is it sort
So
of
you have a lot
plantings
of,
or?
so you have choices in what you want it to look. And fortunately, you have a public works department that has some pretty good landscaping and planting experience. You know, you can plant them either in like a tall, like a grass, basically think of a mulch bottom, you can plant like grasses in them, or you can plant plants that are more tolerant to water or more just like ground cover.
But we haven't decided yet, I guess.
No, and that's really something that can just be done within internally. Either your public works can be installing that or maintaining it, or if you have various garden groups. Like I know you have your gardens behind the library. This is a great type of thing. I know other places that have community groups that maintain facilities like this.
That'd be nice.
So that's something to consider down the
I
road.
mean, they've got a lot, they already have a lot
Yeah.
to maintain, but they're also looking for new projects.
Well, but it's
it'll be a
also
good
very
part-
visible.
It is, it's nice. But I was curious, because these show grates, right? Like the drawings show grates. So do you just like put a
Is it-
grate and then you have like landscaping fabric and you plant over top of it and you, like how
Yeah,
does,
sure.
or is the grate
So
on
that-
the
yeah, that's
side of the
one-
landscaping?
We won't necessarily look 100% like that, but this is one that's in the city. And you can see where they did a combination of, they actually did put trees in there.
Mhm.
This one's a little bit bigger, so you may not be putting a tree in these ones. But you can do tall plantings, shorter plantings, a mix of both.
So, so we shouldn't talk to shade tree then?
It's not gonna be that kind of tree, no. You were talking about a great,
Yeah, I know, I just saw on the drawings, I'm seeing, I'm not like,
Yeah,
I
so
mean, the
what-
idea is this needs to drain to something. We're not just so.
well, ideally, so in the places, and we're kind of working through those final details, in a place where you have storm sewer close by,
Mhm.
what you can do is basically treat this as a new inlet. So they're all kind of water flows into them and then they're depressed
Mhm.
about a foot. So water can go in, settle in. And then if you have an outlet, if you want water to go right to your storm sewer from there, you just put basically like a riser, like an open top grate where water can
Yeah.
pour into there to your storm sewer. I believe it's at least one locations where the storm sewer may be a little too far away. In that case, you just make sure you have enough energy dissipation, slow the water down, let it settle, and then you have more energy dissipation on the back end.
More what?
Energy dissipation, so that you just let water flow in, it will fill up, and then surplus water can keep flowing out.
Right.
But it's basically a depressed landscape area.
Logistical question.
Yes.
Eric, do you think this is something that would be in a position, if this committee is comfortable with this, for Borough Council on July 21 to like approve putting it out to bid?
For their next meeting, yes. Yeah, that would be a good time for that. Right, and then if you authorize us, then at that point, we'll be finishing the plans and going forward.
Right, don't be surprised. I think they're gonna ask the questions I asked about
Oh.
being planted there.
Oh, yeah, people are gonna ask about that.
Yeah,
And that,
so-
we would have more detail on that, like in the plan, it either goes this way, either we have a contractor plan it, or we get it ready, settled, mulched, and then the borough could come in and put plants in as well. Can do it either way.
Maybe, Jeff, if you and Eric could connect on this before it comes to council's attention, so that way the council meeting, I'll know, I can tell council what the plan is for
Right.
that.
But you can give them 2 or 3 choices, right? So,
That's true.
You see what I'm saying? Like, but if you just leave it empty, then the conversation will
Oh,
be
yeah.
pretty broad.
Right.
Okay, so we don't really need to do anything about this now, right? This is gonna go to council in July, and then we'll be ready to put it out for bid. What's the time frame for, do we have a time frame within which we have to do the project for funding purposes? Or?
These couple
Sometime in
years.
2020, still, you have a few years in the grant,
Okay.
so.
Yeah.
But this would most likely happen in the fall, so.
Yeah, probably around the end.
Okay. Does this in any way work together with what we're going to be speaking about maybe later a little bit, or we might not, I guess it's not on our agenda, but it was in your memo about road paving and like sewer and stuff like that? Does that, I mean,
Oh, no,
is
it's
there
on the
any,
agenda.
is there any reason
DC.
to like think about doing this in a way that it coordinates with other work that might be done in these roads where the bump outs are going in?
I'm not for the paving, I mean, I'll defer to Eric, but I'll just throw my 2 cents out there. I don't think for this sort of project, I'm too worried about that, because when someone needs to repave the road, I don't think this will materially affect it. If we had plans to repave Windsor, like in the next year or 2, then I would say, yeah, let's do it as part of that repaving. But I'm not sure if we're gonna be repaving Windsor in the next year or 2.
But like sewer, like the sewers are going down the middle of the street, so I presume
Yeah,
you could dig
yours-
down to the sewer without disturbing these, but what if there's like a lateral underneath or something? Like,
Well, we're trying to identify them, but
Okay.
it's, there's really nothing, really the only permanent structure that's being installed with these is a curb, you move from here to here.
Right.
If you really have to dig and get to it at some point, you're just talking about earth really moving at that point.
Yeah, but you're trying to avoid putting it on top of someone's laterals, right?
Right, yeah, that's the intention, yes.
Not just sewer, but like everything, right?
We're trying to avoid, yeah.
I know
that's-
it's
yeah.
probably impossible, but.
Trying to avoid as many things as possible.
yeah,
But at least the good news is, heaven forbid, if you ever did have to dig it up, we're digging up earth and we're not digging up
Correct.
concrete and asphalt.
Right.
okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, just something to keep in mind when you develop this landscaping plan, that like, that would be another reason not to have a tree there,
Right.
for example, because like then you have to dig up the tree.
That's true.
Okay, thank you. The Haverford Avenue Stormwater Update. We can't wait to talk about this.
So which one,
Progress.
we forgot to play rock, paper, scissors before the meeting for who gets to talk about
Seems to be in
this.
progress.
You know, being the borough manager, I'll start on this one and then you two just have to, jump in front of the slings and arrows. So don't shoot the messengers, message to everyone here. So originally the Haverford, just a quick history on the project. Council awarded this project back in October of last year, I believe. And immediately after awarding it, we got a notice from the contractor that they didn't have the materials and weren't going to be able to get the materials until this year. So the borough graciously gave them a 6-month extension until March 1 to begin work. The contractor agreed with that, and so on March 1, their contract has a 90-day completion period, and so we sent them an official letter, telling them that, the work needs to start March 1 and needs to be done by May 30th, because we didn't want to unduly impact spring and summer sports, special events, so on and so forth. Following that, the contractor ran into some issues with Amtrak. I'll say on the public record, again, I'm not as much of an expert as Eric or Jeff on this, but it frustrated me and that I felt that these were things the contractor could have considered before getting out here, or in that 6 months between October and March, they could have figured out where, some of Amtrak's lines and all that sort of thing were. So they worked through that, and the borough helped them figure that one out. They were doing their work, and we came up on May 30th, and to his credit, Eric and his team, who'd been inspecting and monitoring the project throughout its construction, and have stepped up their inspection time as this project has gone on. Formally asked the contractor, what's your plan for being done and what's the time frame on that? In late May, the contractor responded that they felt they could get the project done by June 24th, and cited the issues with Amtrak as a large reason for why they hadn't completed the project by May 30th. So here we are. Today is June 28th, and as everyone in this room knows, who came to the meeting in person, they are still not done. And it definitely was a concern to me and Jeff and Eric, given the biggest event in the borough is coming up on July 4th. Eric's had some chats with the contractor about that, and our leverage, we have liquidated damages we can charge. In my opinion, they're fairly nominal in the scope of the whole contract. It's $100 a day on a $180,000 contract. So I think the plan that we have, given the circumstances, is that we've asked the contractor, I believe by the end of this week, to limit the scope of disturbance, because right now they still have the whole work area blocked off. They have, you may have noticed, some of the materials they were storing on the side of the road those have been started to clean up and go away.
Okay.
So I think the goal is by the end of this week to limit the disturbance area to as minimal as possible to allow for to limit the. Sorry, I'm losing my words.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So right. At this point, the job is still going on. Unfortunately, we discovered they've been a bit slow, and then we discovered about 2 weeks ago when they finally got all the pipe installed up to the corner, that the pipe was 7 inches too high, so the outlet of the box was higher than the inlet of the box. So they then have gone back and have had to reset
How far
a
back?
section of pipe.
Is it like, did it start at the beginning of the
Well,
pipe?
about half,
further
so
down?
let's say it was 200 feet, they had to go back 100 feet. So that was frustrating, but and that of course slowed them down, so they had to reset that. That being said, their current instructions out there, and that's their field engineers out there riding them on this, is to have that cleaned up for the weekend. Like all the debris, any debris, materials, extra materials, all of that, they've already started is coming out. The road, the trench is supposed to have black top on it, and the sidewalk or the sidewalk areas are supposed to be cleaned up and pedestrian accessible in and out of the park.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I don't know, I'm not sure if any of you have ever been here for fireworks, but that section of the street, like when the fireworks let out, will be wall-to-wall people,
Right.
like full,
Yeah.
they'll be trying to push past
Yeah.
one another. And so, there really can't be, and there's gonna be a lot of little kids, and there can't be like anything
Right.
vaguely looking like a hazard.
Right, like-
And that they're right now, that's what they're supposed to be doing.
Because I feel like when I was trying to cross, this was maybe a couple weeks ago, maybe a week ago, there was no way to walk if you're going under the bridge. Like to walk, there was no sidewalk. Like it was, and it looked like it was like open, and there were like metal plates, and it was all like chaotic, like
Right,
things
they
all
had
over,
worked up
columns
to
and stuff.
they're right up at the intersection, the pipe comes up and there's an inlet and
Right
there's
at the
a manhole
intersection,
there, and they had that all was open.
That, right.
Yes, that's all supposed to be,
It
but
like
it
has.
should have already been filled in, that's the part where they messed up the pipe and had to be in. So that is, the roadway is supposed to be, trench is supposed to be backfilled and have blacktop on it.
Right.
And into
Like
the,
metal plates and
There's not
wire things
supposed
are
to
not
be-
gonna work for 4th of July.
no, there's not supposed to be metal plates or trenches. It's supposed to be established into an area where people can move.
It's just that, like, I mean, they may not realize it, but
Mhm.
there's like significant liability.
Right.
Because, like, there's just, we can't, and the crowds are well known. And they had ample opportunity to finish the job because they could have been doing all that Amtrak nonsense while they were waiting, you know, for their materials to come. So,
Yeah, unfortunately, our operating with them has been, they do not, there's no plan, clearly no planning ahead, because they would show up one day and go like, oh, that's a problem.
yeah, I know, that's like, serial planning,
Right.
when you're supposed to do it in
Yeah.
parallel. Yeah, I get it, I've been there.
So they're so they're supposed to be cleaning that up all now, and then at that point, after 4th of July, the remaining work would be finishing concrete work, like actual, like, finishing everything off, and then they have the 2 inlets on the other side of Winwood. But they're not touching that for now. It is just between now and 4th of July, cleaning the site.
If for some reason they do not do this,
Mm-hmm.
and this is the weekend,
Mm-hmm.
do we have a backup plan to bring in tall, like Jersey barriers that people can't climb over kind of thing, and ensure that we have made any areas that they failed to do, and then worry about the damages that they owe us later? But,
Right. Well, so your
inaccessible
contract
people.
does, written into the contract is the owner's ability to do work and then charge them for something.
Yeah, but I mean, do we have the ability to do that if like, I mean, if we're giving them to the weekend and 4th of July is Monday, that doesn't give us a lot of time
What-
to figure out like, I mean, in the event that if they had a trench, we're like, oh, we can't, we don't have time to fill this trench, we're gonna put plate over, like, do we have the ability to bring in like 6-foot tall Jersey barriers and put them around and fill them with water? Because,
Right.
I mean, I don't wanna get into an argument about who's liable for
Right.
that.
Well, another approach that I've seen done in a situation like this is at their expense, we bring in 3 or 4 security people
That's another
to, to
possibility.
just be there. Because then they can say, yo, kid, don't go there, as
Right.
opposed to, they have a little more control over where people were going than just burying. But, and
Well,
that might be.
I like the barrier idea.
Okay, either way, depends if you can get them.
Yeah.
That, I mean, like the security guards you could probably get.
I mean, that would be, so I guess, Jeff, to put you on the spot with that question. I mean, if you called, just in case, if you called around today or tomorrow, do you think it's something we could get by the
One way or
weekend?
the other, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Yeah, that's
think
a
we should
good
have a plan B
suggestion,
just in
yeah.
case.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, that's understandable.
Yeah, Eric, if your team could just kind of keep Jeff apprised of how, well, it looks like Hamilton, the contractors
Right.
getting towards that goal. And
Yeah,
then we could have
that's-
something on standby, in case, they have to pull the trigger on something, Friday.
Yeah, Chris was out there
Thank you.
this morning,
Yeah, good idea.
giving them
And I think we've all concluded that we would have good grounds not to accept a bid from Hamilton.
That's
Not a
my
responsible
opinion.
bidder.
I'm not gonna put Eric on the spot with that
Well,
question.
They don't sound like a responsible bidder to me based on this experience.
And I feel the same, I feel very strongly the same.
So that's just my opinion. I guess we'll cross that bridge if we ever get
the,
to it.
right.
All right, so thank you for the update. Thank you for everything you're doing. It's not within your control completely. It's frustrating.
Unfortunately, you
And
can't go 1 year
disappointing.
without at least one bad contract.
And can we,
He's mine for this year.
have we given an update to 4th of July committee? So they sort of understand what's going on, so they know what our plan is. I mean, I don't know if they're bringing, like, if vendors are bringing things in and needing to use that road, like, just coordinating, because it's like a lot of, and granted, this is a newly constituted 4th of July committee that doesn't have like a fully rolled out process, but I think some coordination might be a good idea.
Jeff had a meeting with the point of contact
Okay.
for the 4th of July event, Aaron Silvers,
Right.
last week. I don't know if the topic of the Hamilton stuff came up or not.
I did just let him know that it would be, as clean as possible. It may not be able to travel a scooter, but someone can get down there on foot. That his concrete blocks and inlets and boxes would be picked up, and as much parking would be available to him.
Yeah. So that's another thing you just like want to be aware of. You don't want to park anywhere near here at night if you have any plans of getting out before midnight.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, a little PSA, yeah, to anyone
just
who
saying,
watched this
that doesn't
meeting
work.
right now.
You won't be parking.
And really your issue for that section of road is the 1 hour or maybe even half an hour after the event is over. That's when that area floods.
Mhm.
Because they come in like slowly, but they leave
All
at
at the same time, yeah.
And it's dark. People
And
aren't-
everybody's tired. And
Everybody's tired. All right. But it's fun. All right. Thanks again. Let's have a discussion of the 2023 budget. You, the chair of the Finance Administration Committee has asked all other committee chairs to have a discussion at our meeting about any budget requests we might want to put in for 2023. And so I will open the floor to the committee. Do you have any thoughts about that, Ira?
about budget requests?
Yes.
Well, I would look to Samantha to, like, let us know if there are things that are, relevant. I mean, at minimum, I think we're gonna have some expenses for, the master park plan on it. But I mean, I don't know, it doesn't make sense for me to enumerate my, like, guesses as to what we're gonna want. I mean, I think we know, right?
So I'll say, I think this committee, and again, this reflects my own personal priorities, but I think this committee more than any other is gonna have probably more budget requests for council. Because I just think that right now in the borough, our most pressing priority is our infrastructure. And we'll talk about the paving plan if we have time in a little bit here. But I think, doing stormwater and sanitary sewer repair is going to be really important starting next year. I think, continuing to do the things in our pollution reduction plan we said we're going to do, since we're kind of legally obligated to do those things, is going to be important. If we have the ability to do any road paving, I would love to do it, just depending on, again, what's going on with the sewer and storm sewer lines. And in terms of planning, master park planning is something that needs to get moving. And then as well, since we didn't get the TCDI grant, there's another grant I want to apply for in the fall, but if we don't get that, an active transportation plan or something to help tell us, how to actually implement our goals for multimodal transportation is going to be critical as well for the borough.
To budget for the town square planning?
The town square,
Move
it's-
forward
yeah.
with that? Yeah.
So those are the things that come to top of my mind: sewer, storm sewer, active transportation plan, master park plan, town square plan, and stormwater pollution reduction plan items.
So stormwater, sanitary sewer, MS4, these are things where we've already done the groundwork.
Exactly.
Right, we've already got the planning, we have things, we have projects, right? They're really projects that are ready to be maybe fully developed and then put out to bid. So that's like capital expenditures, right? This is,
Exactly. Yeah.
for which we may budget, we may borrow, right?
We could.
You may advise us to borrow for some or all of that. The planning dollars, though, I'm wondering, like, what bucket do they come out of, and how do we determine how much we need to? We did not have enough money for planning this year. Because there are some projects we'll never be able to move forward until we do the planning. We'll just
Right.
keep talking about how we should really do something about the roads here. But people complain all the time how unsafe they are, but we can't really do that without the kind of planning that, you applied for the grant for, and we didn't get it, but that, doesn't mean we won't get grant funding, but I feel like we need to budget. I feel like we need to
Yeah.
budget with the idea that this is necessary work and we're not getting a grant. Now, if we get a grant, that's fabulous, right? But I don't think you can budget like on the assumption that we're gonna get grant funding for everything, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And so
So, I
everything
mean-
you just said, yeah.
I mean, I would think this committee should really recommend that we do those three, that we really budget what we need to get those three planning
And
projects
that's
ready to be done.
the most vague to me in terms of the amount we need is the master park plan. I'm just not sure what that should cost, but maybe Samantha knows.
Yeah, the one I did, and well, again, it's kind of going to depend about how much professional involvement you want, but I'll say this. The one I did in New Britain that I thought turned out really well, that was $60,000. And half of it was paid by a grant from DCNR, from the state. And then the borough chipped in $5,000. And then a nonprofit organization, the New Britain Civic Association, paid $25,000 of it.
So do we intend to fundraise for that master park plan?
I think with the timing we're looking at, I unfortunately don't know how feasible that's going to be because, I don't know, the application, well, here's the problem. I think we talked a little about this with council, is the application period for that state grant is January through April. And then you're not going to know if you get it until like October or November. So if you do it that way, you're basically like punting all of 2023. So I think we just have
I
to.
don't think we should do that.
Yeah, I think we just have to find the money to fund that one.
Yeah.
Active transportation plan, that cost me in New Britain $15,000, and I got a grant from Walkworks to pay almost all of that one. That I think would be realistic to be able to apply for, get the grant, and do it during 2023.
That doesn't seem like as much money as I would expect it to pay.
Well, there's a couple different ways to look at it. So I think what we're gonna have to do if the other thing I'm looking at, and now I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit here, but since we didn't get the TCDI grant, they're part of the federal infrastructure bill has this Safe Streets grant program. And I basically want to take the TCDI application, rework it a little bit, and apply for that federal grant, which is due in September of this year. Which then hopefully we would know early 2023 if we got that one or not. Barring that, I think I want to just kind of break off. I think what we have to do is the total plan that Pannoni had put together, I think was an estimated cost of $125,000. And I think whatever grants we can get to take chunks out of that cost, if we don't get that federal funding, I think would be the way to go. So like just the active transportation piece would be $15,000-$20,000 that we could get a grant to pay for, sort of, and stuff like that. But to be fair, to answer, master park plan's probably about 60. The plan that we wanted to apply for getting grant funding to really do the road and traffic stuff is going to be about $125,000, and then for town square, that's part of the phase 2, which we would know probably September, October, as those plans get further along with Simone Collins, what sort of price they think we would be in for that.
So all right. So maybe we can push that off and have it put into the final budget after we find out. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just think we can't move these projects forward otherwise, and so.
Agreed.
I guess I have a question. One more question. This is an infrastructure related question that I hate to even bring up, but so we all kind of know like potentially Save on Avenue, anything. An expensive thing could just break down at any time. And, we could be faced with like decisions about what to do, whether to fix it, what kind of repair to do. We could potentially be faced with the decision that this doesn't make sense. We can't throw more, like good money after bad. And we're gonna like find another solution out of here, which would be complicated and would involve a whole bunch of expenses in order to move that in a different direction, since we have, tenants. I'm not at all proposing this is what I want, but I see the potential for something to happen that's expensive to resolve one way or another. We've also sort of committed to doing something that involves, like $1.3 million to remove at some point. And, when we say at some point, there's a balance. Like the longer we don't make a decision and do that, the more likely it is we're going to face a situation where we have to do an emergency repairs. Is it reasonable to have a rainy day, like a capital rainy day fund for that property? I don't think we have any place to quickly get funds from. in the event that we need them? Or do
Yeah,
we?
I think
How does
that,
that work?
yeah, so the challenge with that is, you know, in general, I mean, the borough's general fund right now has, you know, thanks to work done by my predecessors here and the work I did on this year's budget with council, has, you know, about $1 million in a rainy day fund, which is not intended for a capital project.
Right.
It's intended, you know, for operational sort of things.
Right.
The challenge with, you know, borrowing in advance is kind of tough because, you know, technically the way it's supposed to work is you're supposed to spend the money, 80% of the money when you borrow within 2 years and 100% of it within 5 years. You know, that being said, I mean, you can do a draw facility. I mean, if you want, I can talk to PFM about how something like that would work and see if it's feasible or not.
But see, there's a kind of a more fundamental question there. So, I mean, and it's hard to predict all the hypotheticals, but let's say like, you know, like an air conditioner went out, like the air conditioning went out, okay? So you wouldn't want to buy a new air conditioner. So you'd be faced with the choice of like having the tenant leave and losing that income, or like renting something that sat outside to serve as a temporary unit. But you don't wanna buy something new for something that has a 2-year lifetime. So that, I think it's gonna very much depend on like which thing failed. But like I've been involved in a lot of projects where we knew we were tearing a building down, and like trust me, like, you know, we did not spend a lot of money like fixing that building up prior to that. But yet there were people in it, so we had to,
No.
you know, make it serviceable. But
30-year warranty roofs with new insulation? You didn't do that?
well,
Good planning.
yeah, I understand, but, well, okay, let's not even go there, but I'm just saying, but like, that, so I mean, hopefully nothing will break, but if it does break, there are solutions that you can do, there are interim solutions you can do that aren't as expensive, because it
know.
doesn't have to have a 30-year lifetime.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah. No, okay,
So
but
I'd like.
you have to have money for that.
We made that mistake, and it's, you know, like, and I don't want to be pushed into that position again, so, right.
Yeah, well, I mean, now would be like, look,
But in any
I don't think we're gonna make that mistake again.
I hope not. If you did have something that you had to do something about quickly, whether, you know, like, I mean, anything, renting temporary equipment or whatever you needed to do in order to, like, you know, meet your obligations to tenants, where would that come from? Can that come from the rainy day fund? Like, what's the line between operating?
I mean, it could, it's just, the main thing with the rainy day fund is A, it needs to serve as rainy day for operational expenses, and B, it also has to serve as a cash flow
Right.
backup, because we're so property tax reliant. You know, almost all the borough's money comes in May of every year, but, you know, I like to get paid every 2 weeks, so, you know, lots of other people do too, so, you know.
Yeah, but if you're gonna put out more money than it would cost to break the leases, then don't do it.
Right, that's right.
Yeah.
But it costs money to break the leases too.
Yeah,
Where does that
So,
come from?
I guess here's what I can find out. I can ask, like I said, it won't cost us anything to ask this question. I can ask PFM, what would be the viability, would it be feasible for us to establish a draw facility? And if so, what would it cost us to have a draw facility in case we needed it? Hopefully we won't ever will, between, you know, plan A of hoping nothing happens and plan B of finding alternatives, but if we then actually did have to do something, we would have that draw facility available to us.
What, would it be restricted and what it could be spent for?
Yeah, it would be the same as doing any other borrowing, and that it would be restricted to a specific usage. And
I'm just curious, how specific is that?
I mean, you could say, you know, property repairs at 201's, critical property repairs at 201's hit.
Life
Okay,
safety.
so then the problem is if you're in the situation that you just alluded to, where it makes more sense to break your leases, you can't use that to buy your way out for leases because those aren't.
Well, again, these are quite, yeah, that's true. I mean, that's
I mean, I
something,
hate to talk about these things.
I
They're
know,
painful
well-
and awful to talk about, but the part of the problem is we don't talk about these things, and then,
Well, you're
you know,
right.
there's always
so
a
you could, I
possibility.
mean,
you
yeah,
get
I
in
mean,
this
you can tell
situation.
here, the main thing with taking on debt, you can use it for, well, not any purpose, but a whole slew of purposes. You just have to set them out ahead of time.
Right.
So as long as you said this money would be for critical emergency repairs at 201 Sabine, you know, if we had to break any leases, heaven forbid if we just had to, you know,
Shut it down.
exactly like,
What if we had the budget to have $1 million on hand more than we already have in the event that we need to face a situation like that?
not to be snarky, but just to show the challenge with that question, how long would we have to, if we had to put that together in 1 year, that would be impossible without some massive new revenue source.
Do we
Unless we
have,
completely forgo the rest of the capital budget.
do we have, I mean, this is probably a very naive question, but do we have something like vaguely akin to renter's insurance? Like,
We have liability
Insurance.
insurance on the building, yeah.
right, so I mean, maybe for some of these things, like, it might be covered by insurance, I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. I could take a look at the policy.
Yeah.
Um,
Like,
and,
if all of a sudden the building is unoccupiable, you know, I don't know.
and we're in renewal right now, so I don't know, maybe that's also a question I asked our insurers, what sort of coverage do we have for these situations? And if we don't have it, what would it cost to add that sort of coverage?
Yeah, that's a good point.
I think the old adage, you know, is something like if you can't afford whatever it is, you need insurance. And I think unfortunately that's the situation
Yeah,
we're probably
I
in.
think that's
too.
right.
Yeah, but the nice part about it is it's short term. In other words, like, you can
Yeah.
buy this, you don't have to buy this insurance in perpetuity,
No.
just for 2 years or whatever.
That's a really good point. I think that's a really good, that, I would feel much better for paying, if such coverage exists, I think it would be
Just
really
can't
wonderful.
see the cost of the income of the
But we
revenue.
do need to be careful what we sort of, right, we need to understand what it covers and
Yeah.
what it doesn't. Yeah,
I mean, at some level, you know, you can get like a deductible that's high enough that like you can afford to pay the deductible, but yet it doesn't become a catastrophic loss.
right.
True, that's a really good thought, Ira.
Yeah.
So I'll talk with PFM about what the viability of basically for draw facility, not to insult anyone's intelligence, just in case anyone watching at home later. Draw facility is basically equivalent to a line of credit. I'll check the viability of that, and I'll talk with our insurance broker about what our current coverage is at 201 Sabine,
Okay.
and if it doesn't cover these sort of things, how we do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. Because the more straightforward answers to the question you just said is within the time frame we're talking about, it'd basically be impossible for the borough of its own accord to have that kind of money set aside.
Yeah,
Which I think is the point we're trying to make here.
that kind of is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's other things we'd rather do with that money,
Yeah.
really, is the point.
Well, that too.
Like, knock it down. Yeah.
All right, so, I think this committee doesn't have any sort of additional budget requests, right? Like I certainly don't want to propose any new capital projects. I think we have plenty on the plate, and really what we need to just make sure we have in the budget is adequate, that we've adequately budgeted to get these projects done, even if we don't, succeed in getting all the grant funding that we want.
Yeah,
And then still go after all the grants we can.
Yeah, I would encourage the public and members of council, just to look at our existing 5-year capital plan to your point.
Yes, okay, excellent. All right, moving on to item D, potential action items for Borough Council. Wow, this meeting is going longer than I thought. Parks and Rec duties, which we have talked about before and sort of tabled. And I don't know, Ira, if you have anything that you would like to suggest. I think obviously there's a master parks planning process. The next item, park permits and fees, is really something that I think it makes a lot of sense for the Parks and Rec Board to look at.
Yeah.
I think summer camps, start to look at what could be on offer for next year to bring back that summer camp in the park program that used to be very, very wildly popular.
Yeah.
We start looking for providers for that. Anything else?
Well, I mean, this is, I think, related, I just don't know the latest on this. What is the update on people applying to fill the vacancies on Parks and Rec?
So I did not know that offhand. Missy is the one receiving and coordinating that, but I could find out if you want to
Like, for the next, it would be great, like, I don't know if it's feasible to like make those appointments or like.
Oh, yeah, I mean,
do the
definitely the
process at
goal.
the next meeting.
I think,
Oh, yeah.
yeah. The
Okay.
July 21 council meeting is when those appointments are gonna be made.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that hopefully the new appointees will be available to start meeting right away. August might be a tricky time to
Right, I
coordinate
get that.
everybody. So in the event that we don't have another infrastructure and then council meeting before then, I
Right.
think it makes at least sense to bring this to council at the next meeting. Oh, my pen is leaking.
Right,
And,
well, I mean, I think that,
and have at least something to have a dialogue with the board about what
Right, because
they
I-
want on their plate and how we want to prioritize it.
right, because to me, the key issue in terms of their charge and workload and all that is exactly where the park master plan fits within their responsibilities. I mean, right now, I know we have a proposal to have it be a separate group, and maybe that's the best approach just in terms of workload.
Right.
But,
Right, but I mean, like, clearly we need to have a discussion about,
Right.
is this,
because that, I mean, that's a huge body of work, and if it sits on that committee versus sitting elsewhere, it changes what they're
Agreed.
able to do.
I mean, I think that is you're right, that's the first. There's not much point getting too far into this without.
We can make a list, but if they're doing the national park plan, they're not gonna have time for the list.
True, and I agree with all that.
Yeah.
But if we're just today just making a list and that's
Yeah.
all, I have a relatively small potatoes item, but one I would really like them to take on. I think like back in January, me and Jeff were trying to get figured out willingness to seasonally close the
Right.
bathrooms. And I think that's something I'd like to have a Parks and Rec committee look at.
Yeah, that did get dropped. Do you remember that?
Yeah, well, but what about, don't they have like football out there or something, or that you'd want to close during that? I don't know when that is.
Well, without, belaboring the point too much, seasonally we were talking about like winter time.
Yeah, I just don't know when the football league runs, that's all.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly why I think why I'd want
Yeah.
Parks and Rec to
Exactly, yeah.
look at.
Oh, yeah, a user meeting also, that was something that
Oh,
we're
yeah.
gonna sort of resuscitate that now that we're back in people actually using things and it's more or less in our rearview mirror, we hope. So that was the other thing. But I think that at the first meeting, after the appointments, Samantha's gonna run that meeting, and I think, to have an opportunity to sort of review the memo on Master Parks Planning, which really does lay out the scope of the work pretty well, and then, have sort of allow the board itself to discuss its willingness to, to commit that kind of time, and then take it from there, so. All right, so I think, unless you want this committee to act on park permits and fees today, I think we probably should allow the Parks and Rec board to sort of, I know it'd be great to get them in place,
Yeah.
but it's probably too late for this year anyway.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, so moving on, we have a paving plan update. And there
Oh,
was,
sorry, I just thought of one other
Okay.
Parks and Rec duty. We talked about this committee, we talked about the borough in general, just kind of tracking how the skate park pilot is
Mhm.
doing.
Yeah.
And I think that'd be a great duty for Parks and Rec as well,
I
potentially.
agree.
Is it fair to say it's going as well, if not better than expected?
I would agree with that, yeah. As far as I've heard from the police and residents, there haven't been any incidents. I mean, as Chief Gallagher said at the council meeting that night, it's actually cut down on
Right.
police response to skateboarding elsewhere in town. And we have gotten, we got one noise complaint so far,
But do you
but
know what time of day that was? Was it
I
like
do
during
not.
operating hours or someone stayed late?
I know there was the one complaint that I saw where somebody was not pleased because they lived nearby and there were still skaters in there at 10 PM. That was a failure to close.
Right.
yeah, we've definitely worked to do a better job with that since
Because
then.
that noise at 10 PM
Yeah,
is very
that's
different.
my
from that
guess, is that noise complaint was after hours.
But I don't know.
Okay, well, that's not.
I haven't, I mean, I asked.
And whenever,
I asked Brad at the library, since they're probably closer than anybody, if the noise was a disturbance, he's like, no.
as of last Friday, we have 24 survey responses, and it's been overwhelmingly positive with some good feedback for if we do decide to do anything in the future with it, and we'll continue collecting.
But just keep in mind, if there are issues where the users of the facility aren't doing the right thing, we know who to talk to tell them to, get back in line. I don't know if that's an issue, but we know we could talk to Dave Roberto.
Okay, so who is that magic person?
What was the kid's name?
Okay, oh, Harry?
Harry, I mean,
Yeah,
we can get them to spread the word that like, but I don't think it's an issue, but if it were,
No, but.
we know who to, they're gonna police themselves.
Yeah, I mean, no, they police themselves to
Already.
the most part. I mean, one problem, there's tons of scooters in there, which is really against the rules. It's not against the rules for safety reasons, it's against the rules because skateboarders don't like to share their parks with scooters, or at least that's what traditionally people think, but they don't seem to be having problems, there's a lot of room in there, so. Like, they feel like some skateboarders feel like scooters get in the way.
Yeah,
That's the biggest problem we have. I think
That
we're-
seems, yeah, but
Yeah, I
there's
mean,
like so much room, they're not
our
colliding, they're
insurance,
getting in.
our liability insurer wasn't thrilled about the idea of quad skates either, but he is, as our broker wasn't, let me rephrase that, our broker wasn't thrilled with the idea, and he's following up with the actual person who actually knows what they're talking about to, see what the tolerance for that should
I
be.
haven't seen,
Okay.
I haven't really seen these skaters in there, to be
Yeah.
honest with you. So, yeah, no, thus far, it seems to be, they seem to be managing themselves really well. Okay, now, moving on to the paving plan update.
I'll try to do the short version of this, and if we need to talk about a future meeting, then so be it. So my thanks to prior management and to the staff at Panoni, who in 2020 put together a paving plan for Borough Council that's on the Borough website, where they went through, evaluated all the roads in the borough. Since then, the borough has only paved one road. We paved Dudley Avenue last year, which was the worst stretch of road according to the report from Panoni. Since then, we aren't doing any paving this year. And there's a couple of reasons for that, just so the public understands. It's not that we don't want to pave roads. Trust me, I personally would love to pave roads. I paved a lot of roads in my last town. It's that we don't want to waste taxpayer money. And as we kind of alluded to earlier, the borough has a lot of stormwater and sewer line that is likely going to need to be repaired. And the last thing I want to do is pave a road and then have to dig it up and then repave it when we're fixing a sewer or stormwater line. Or worse yet, if there's one that is in need of repair and hasn't been, and heaven forbid it then cause a sinkhole on our new road or burst open with sewage on our new road, which are things that have unfortunately happened in the last 3 years in the borough. In addition to that, what concerns on top of the roadway, to the point Council Vice President made a few minutes ago in terms of planning, I also don't necessarily want to pave a bunch of roads, without having our sort of active transportation, our multimodal, our traffic pattern sort of study done. In the event that there's any particular road improvements or treatments, we would want to do as part of that. So my goal is, this year, Public Works is working hard on getting the stormwater and sewer lines mapped and their condition determined. Sorry, I have to cough real quick. Should have brought water with me here. So that way in 2023 we can start fixing those. And as we just talked about, we want to have funding in the budget in 2023 to get the transportation plan done. So thought process is 2023, we get, stormwater and sewer lines fixed up, we get a road plan done. 2024, we can really go hard at paving some roads in the borough. Yes.
I have to say, one question. So as I recall, the Dudley was a 4 or something
It was a
on the
4.
scale, right?
It's the
Are there
elevation.
any new 4s that have like popped up since we did the study?
We can't answer that top right because we'd have to actually go. We haven't done any further studies since
Right.
2020.
So my only caveat would be like, if there are new roads for whatever reason that have deteriorated to the point where they're like similar to Dudley, we should think about doing those, but otherwise, your plan makes complete sense.
Let me ask this question, Eric. Would it be reasonable to assume that roads generally are going to, other than on vehicular traffic will affect it, but they're generally probably going to degrade at about the same rate on average?
They are. The only caveat being unless you're going in doing construction on a road that's going to degrade the road faster,
Yeah.
they probably haven't changed dramatically in the last 2 years.
I guess you could look at the 3s or something.
That's what I was about to say. Would it make sense, Eric, for someone from Panoni by the end of the year to look at the ones that are 3s and make sure none of those have fallen into being a 4,
Yeah, that is.
if you're fine with that as well, Michelle.
Sure, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, my guess is there won't be, but like, at least this way,
Yeah,
like, we've done the due diligence. It's a little bit like when, Carol Marie suggested we look at certain sidewalks first.
Sure.
Because like they were in bad shape. Which we did, I believe.
Yes. Well, we're in the process of doing that,
Well,
yes.
whatever. We looked at them.
Right. So I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, I assume that's not like an enormous, time-consuming, horrible, I mean, there's not that many, was it like 4
There weren't
miles?
that
or-
many threes.
No, and it's worth also, I mean, we could do it, it's
It was
also,
4.8 miles of road.
and also input from, you're driving around, if
Yeah, so
all it
maybe,
works is driving around.
maybe we start with a
They see
visual
something,
inspection.
They know.
Maybe we start with a visual
Yeah.
inspection of 3s before we start drilling a bunch of.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I wasn't suggesting new.
Yeah, okay, so just a visual inspection of the 3s.
I think that's probably, if we know the roads that were, I guess, put it this way, we know the roads that were the worst ones. You start looking at,
Sure.
okay, is there any area in them that's really,
Yeah, because, sometimes it happens, I guess, because of not that we had a terrible winter.
Right.
The salt, and
Mhm.
it
Well,
could,
you're
Like
right.
South Essex Avenue was all rated as a 3.
what was?
South Essex Avenue, I mean, if that's a 3, then
Okay,
it's not, the road's in good shape, so it's.
okay, well, yeah.
The bigger sort of challenge here with this that I wanted some feedback from the committee on, if we have time, if not, I understand, is actually paying for these road repairs. So there's 2 schools, there's really just 2 ways to do it. The borough gets about $110,000 a year in liquid fuels funding from the state. I don't see that dramatically changing. You never know what the future holds, but I don't see that dramatically changing. And we're talking probably $1.5 million, $2 million worth of road repairs to completely do the repairs from the Pannoni plan. So there's 2 ways you can do it. You can do it the way the borough has historically done it is you save up money, you pave a road. The problem with that is, a road generally has 10, maybe 15 years of lifespan, and at $100,000 a year, you're not, at best, you're going to keep up with the plan, but you're never really going to get ahead of it, in my opinion. And I had the same challenge in New Britain. So what I did there, and again, I hate to it just happens the things we're doing here are borrowing money. It's not the usual go-to thing. It's just to borrow money left and right. But what I did in New Britain was I borrowed the money to just get it all done, get it up to where it should be, tie the repayment of that loan to the liquid fuels funding, and also you get a savings by doing it that way from bulk and mobilization costs.
Right.
That offset the interest costs generally that you're going to incur from it. Now, obviously, the rate environment's a little different than what it was 2 or 3 years ago when I did the work in New Britain. But I think realistically, that's our way to do it.
Yeah, but, again, maybe this is all over now, but is there utility work scheduled to the next 3 to 4 years that would pave half the street, or that's all done?
Unfortunately, utilities don't really keep us in the loop on those plans
We usually find those things out,
after they open the road.
like, within the last year.
Because, that's what happened on the south side, right? They were
Right.
doing everything, so then we paid the other half.
Yeah.
So something like that would be happening, but I don't know.
I'll say this, I don't know, Pico's mentioned me, they're doing a bunch of natural gas work this year, and Aqua, I've seen a bunch of road opening permits from
Yeah.
this year. I unfortunately wouldn't count on that.
But, okay, let me ask a question a different way then. If that happens, this time on this side, would we hop on that, or we would also delay because of the linking up with these other plans?
Well, there's 2 ways, you guys just adopted the ordinance, right, that requires them to, the utility.
No, it's on the to-do list.
Okay, it's on the to-do list. So, step 1 is have an ordinance that requires utilities to contribute towards paving. But if that aside, when a company comes in, you either require them to do the half-width paving, or you take a fee in lieu of that. Which is what we actually do in a lot of other municipalities, where a utility company, they're responsible to pave. Okay, instead of having to do it, they give you the equivalent amount that would have cost them,
Isn't,
and then we pay for our roads program.
that's what we did,
Out of that.
right?
You maybe did in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm asking like, let's say like it happens in 6 months, they say, we're doing Essex, the three, right? Would we, at that point, pave all of Essex, or would we take the money and do it later after we sorted out the other issues?
Gotcha.
It's like a hypothetical.
I think it'd be on a road by road
Yeah,
basis.
exactly.
Yeah, okay. But we will at least make a decision at that point.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
At this point, what is the status of our sewer exam? Like, do we, at this point, have a sense, like, we know where the sewer lines are that are ancient and are gonna need repair, or are we still imaging and doing that?
We're still imaging, so in Public Works Defense, the skate park project consumed the time that was originally gonna be dedicated to that.
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah,
not,
so
accusing
they're,
you. I just literally don't know the
No,
status.
they're on it now. They're on it now, and I think it's something that by the end of the year, I think
Okay.
we can be in a position for 2023 to really start doing some construction.
Oh, yeah, I mean, because it's not, that won't affect necessarily every road. By
No,
talking-
true,
like,
that's
it-
true.
That would help us
Exactly.
make a decision about whether or not we want to.
True, like if you had a road where the sewer and storm water was good, and you had a utility come in, then we would, I would say we would go and
Go for
pave
it.
it,
Okay.
yeah.
That's what,
Yes.
that's what I'm getting.
Perfect. That is all. Okay, anything else on paving? Do you want to recommend, I mean, I think that,
I have one other philosophical point I just want to make for the benefit of the public who may or may not read my memo on this. The other sort of thing real quick about this is, and I believe prior management has talked to council about this, is the equity of paying for capital improvements. And I also think that debt financing is a fair way of paying for capital improvements, because then the people actually using and benefiting from it are the ones who are paying the cost of it as taxpayers. Whereas if you save up and do it, someone may live in the borough for 20 years, they missed out on some service or something because we've been putting money aside for a road project, they move out of the borough, then next year we pave the road.
Well, but the other advantage of debt financing is it gets fixed in a reasonable time frame instead of 20 years from now when you've saved up all the money.
Exactly.
I mean,
And then the last thing I do want to say about the debt thing is, of course, the other goal of this would be, once the work is done, to then keep up with it so that we don't have to, borrow, or at least borrow quite that much money, for it.
that's probably the one thing that really sort of weighs against the idea of do all the roads at once. If you do them on a rotating basis, then you don't wind up in that situation in 10 years. Where like we have to redo all the roads again, you have sort of a plan where you do,
the good news is we can't do them that fast, so.
I mean, that is, something to think about, possibly.
Yeah.
Although that doesn't necessarily make sense to do them by rating level, because the ratings are not, they're scattered all over. You'd kind of want to do it by,
Yeah, well,
whatever.
okay.
You guys will figure that out, but I think that certainly it does, I'm in agreement with your memo. It does not make sense, as tempting as lovely as it would be to repave all the roads now. It doesn't make sense to do that. If we're going to be going and, digging them back up again to get to the sewers, reopening them. So,
Okay,
all right. Then on your borough projects memo, which is item E, I've read that. I don't have any questions about any of the ongoing projects. Do you have any, Ira?
I'll just say that I mentioned this residential EV charger thing to some people, and they were like, not from here, and they were like, totally thought that was an awesome idea, and they were gonna pursue it. So if we do actually pull it off, and we're one of the first, we should get some, I know we will, but we should get some good PR about
Oh, yeah,
about
so,
that, because it's a kind of a new idea.
Yeah, Pico is very excited about this project. The company we're working with below, who provides our chargers, is very excited about it. I think we're getting pretty close on that. I'm really hopeful that the public health and safety has primarily been the committee talking about it, and I think we're pretty much in a place where at the July 21 council meeting where council can start to make a decision on it.
Right.
Because that is the barrier for a lot of people, that they don't have a driveway, and therefore they just don't feel like they can, safely do it. Okay?
All right. Anything else? I don't see anybody here.
Well, Fred Bush is there, but I don't think he counts as the public.
Fred's here? I didn't
Yeah,
see
Fred's,
Fred. Hi, Fred. Oh, I see, up there.
That's
Okay,
probably for our meeting
so
after.
there will be no public comment then, I
Oh, I see
take it?
there's a meeting.
Yeah.
All right, in that case, I'll take a motion to,
I move to adjourn.
okay. Second?
I'm in favor.
All right,